So guys, before we get started, don't forget we do have that amazing discount code thanks to Tier 0 Games going on right now. And all you have to do is put in ZWGames5 to get 5% discount on your total order at tier0games.com. The links will be in the description below, so check those out for massive discounts on all your Hidden Summoner needs as well as all your other Yu-Gi-Oh needs. But let's get on with the profile. What's up YouTube, Dad here for Wargames. Continuing the trend from yesterday's Cyber Dragon deck profile, I thought best to revisit Ancient Gears. Now, Ancient Gears are also another machine type archetype that kind of deal with the OTK capabilities and machine abilities of just fusion monsters beating through your opponent and going in for game. Now, they do lack the consistency that Cyber Dragon has, and Cyber Dragon does have that little bit more added touch to it. However, there could be in the future where we get more Ancient Gear support, so definitely keep an eye out for these cards and push just to see if this deck could be even more busted. It's still very, very powerful, and if they open up the correct hand, they can OTK you very, very easily, especially when they're bringing out beat monsters like this. They're attacking him for game, and then also not being able to activate your spells and traps during a damage step as well, so that can really, really shut you down. Unfortunately, the way the game has gone, there's very few battle traps, in my opinion. Stuff like, you know, Mirror Force, Magic Cylinders, and kind of traps like that. There's less of those around right now, or being played in the meta, or even in the game. So they're less relevant than Cyber Dragons, but they're still very, very fun to play. And relatively cheaply to pick up as well. The only card that really, really hurts picking up is Ancient Gear Fusion, which this build does resolve around, but you don't have to use the Ancient Gear Fusion element. So without further ado, I'm going to take you through the profile, show you exactly what we've got and why we've got it. So of course we've got triple Ancient Gear Wyvern. This card pretty much is your bread and butter of the deck. If it is normal summoned or special summoned, you add an Ancient Gear card from your deck to your hand, except itself. Also, you cannot set cards for the rest of this turn. You can only use the effect once per turn. If this card attacks your opponent's monster, cannot activate its effects until the end of the damage step, so that's very, very good and powerful itself. Triple Ancient Gear Hound. In time, normal summon this guy, burn 600, win. No, it is used to fusion summon as well, so you inflict 600 damage, and then they can't activate their spells and traps to the end of the damage step. And then you can fusion summon one Ancient Gear fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. Now the downside is, in Master Rule 4, you did have the ability of going into, or in Master Rule 3 you would go into this guy, fuse the stuff in your hand, and then activate, not Power Bond, Overload Fusion, banish all those, and you'd have two massive fusion monsters on board, and you'd beat into game. Unfortunately, with the way the game has gone now, with Master Rule 4, they can't do that as consistently, which is probably another reason why they've kind of taken a hit. So until Link Frame's free, fingers crossed we get an Ancient Gear monster as well. Double Ancient Gear Frame. Now you can play this at free. It's probably the one thing that I would consider bumping up to free straight away in this deck. This card, you discard a card and add an Ancient Gear Golem or spell and trap card that specifically lists that card in its name. That of course searches you out your Ancient Gear Fusion. Double Ancient Gear Gadget. Now, I'm not playing the Machine Dupe version, so this could probably be dropped to 1 if you wanted to bump up the gear to 3. Now, the reason I'm only playing this at 1 is it's just there as a target for box. So the idea is, if you've got enough fusion spells in hand, you normal summon Wyvern, Wyvern searches box, box searches gadget. Straight away you've got 3 monsters, so as long as you've got a fusion spell, you can push your plays into some of your Ancient Gears. Double Reactor Dragon. Now, you can play this at 3 if you want to go for a VFD kind of version of this deck as well. It's very, very powerful. I really, really like it as a 3k beta, but at 2 is more than enough because we do focus on the Ancient Gear element. Now, the issue with the Ancient Gear element is we play 2 Ancient Gear Golem and 1 Ancient Gear Golem Ultimate Pound, purely because these can get very, very cloggy. So you've got to be very, very careful with the way you build this deck. They're very important for the Ancient Gear Fusion, which of course lets you fusion an Ancient Gear Fusion monster from your extra deck, use a monster from your hand or field as fusion material. If you use Ancient Gear Golem or Ancient Gear Golem Ultimate Pound you control as fusion material, you can also use monsters from your deck instead. Now, it's kind of like a weaker El Shaddoll Fusion, or Shaddoll Fusion, sorry. And the idea is you have to control one of these, so you would have to use Catapult, Catapult's effect to destroy Gear Town. Sorry. Catapult brings out one of these guys. Gear Town could then bring out Wyvern. Wyvern would then search you to Fusion. You would then activate Ancient Gear Fusion using Pound, and then sending monsters from your deck to the graveyard instead. So it can give you a lot of play around should you need it. And then of course the 1 box to of course use search box off of Wyvern. Wyvern gets you into gear and push your plays further forward that way. Now the monster count is low because the majority of big monsters can brick you quite hard. So you do rely on your smaller monsters a lot more, which is why you could probably figure out about putting gear up to 3. We've then got triple catapult, pretty much a staple of the deck. Triple gear town, again, another staple of the deck. Double terraforming, because gear town is that important. And double fortress. You could bump fortress up to 3 if you want to, but again, it can start to slow your hand down a bit. Power bond at 2, you could easily cut this down to 1 if you wanted to. It is just for those odd occasions that you do open up heavy monster traps, you still just activate power bond, even though the dog doesn't like power bond. And go into. It can definitely be dropped down to 1 if you're playing the Ancient Gear Fusion, because then you're playing around with about 5 fusion cards in your main deck itself. Double limit removal. Now the only card this doesn't affect is this guy right here, because its effect is on the field. Power bond does affect it, so power bond is part of its summoning condition. So rather than it coming out with 45 and then doubling up to 9k, it comes out as 9k, which is why it's, you know, basically being affected during its summon state, not on the field. Whereas limit removal affects it on the field, which is why it can't turn it to like an 18,000 beta after power bond, which would be insane. But that's just a little side note to keep in mind. Cobble the Grave, you want your Wyvern, your Gear Town and your Catapult all effects all going off, so you've got to be very, very protected against that. Olo Fusion, Dark Hole can easily be a Regeki if you want it to. Reasoning is very, very good because you've got level 4s, 3s, 9s, 8s, I believe that is it, 4 3s, 9s, 8s, yeah. You've got a good chunk of monsters that can go through in the Reasoning, and Reasoning can be very, very helpful and very, very powerful. One Monster Reborn, you know, you fusion summon out one of your fusion monsters, it does unfortunately get destroyed, you bring it back Monster Reborn, happy blooming days. One Forge Barrel, good to put your Catapult into the graveyard, because then of course you banish that, pop a card, give yourself a gear token, which can then be used for link material if you want it to, and then you get the effect by popping either your Fortress or of course your Gear Town as well. And then we finish off with the one Ancient Gear Reborn. Now you don't necessarily need this because we are going for the OTK potential, but should the game last a little bit longer than not, it's better to have this card in your deck than not, because it does give you recycle capabilities and can be very, very helpful if you did Reason and get a couple of cards into the graveyard. Now onto the extra deck. Of course we play double Chaos Ancient Gear Giant. This card is an absolute beast, sitting at 4,500, and like I said, if you use Power Bond it goes up to 9k. We've then got the one Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem, which can come off of Ancient Gear Megaton Golem. When this is destroyed, it can bring this out, which is very, very good and synergized. We've still got triple Ancient Gear Hound, because it is a nice little defensive card that can stall your opponent out until you get the right monsters that you need. XYZs, we got the one Heavy Armoured Train Iron Wolf, the one number 59 Crooked Cook, the one 41 Baguska, and the one Gigan X. Now, these could be stuff like Tornado Dragon, Exton Knight. Exton Knight could be a better 59 if you wish, but then it means you'd only be able to use Exton Knight once, because then of course he would destroy the board, and then of course you'd bring out your 2 monsters on board from your Gear Town and maybe Fortress if you've got both of those in play. So Exton is another option for you to play around with. You've just got to be careful that your opponent's got more than 3 cards at minimum, so you can activate your Exton Knight. For the Link monsters, we've got the one YUGIOH and the one Mrs. Radiant. Now the Mrs. Radiant, because all your Ancient Gears are Earth, sometimes it's better to go into that than Genius, just because you're giving your monsters even more of a boost should you need to. And then of course we've got the one Boral Sword and the one Borrowload. Boral Sword is self-explanatory like the Cyber Dragon one. Being able to attack with one of your fusion monsters, shifting it to defense, and then going in with a Boral Sword is very, very powerful. It's less relevant that you'll get a Boral Sword off in this deck, because this deck doesn't flood the board as much as it probably could do. So what you could try and do is you take out and put in a Phoenix and a Unicorn for these quite easily, because they'll be used more consistently than of course those two. That's entirely up to you on how you want to play it. Like I said, the extra deck is less relevant in this deck. It's more about the fusion monsters than it is about anything else, because again, it's rare that you have the ability to get a Link 2 off and then get one of your fusions on board as well, which is probably the one downside of course Ancient Gears, is that they can't flood the board as well as they would like to. Anyway, that is it for the deck profile. I hope this gives you a couple of ideas or revitalise your interest in Ancient Gears. Like I said, this is just something that I've been picked back up and had a bit of a trial out with. There's still bits of areas of improvement. I've had a couple of test games with this deck. So I personally say, while they're cheap, pick up the little bits that you can, Ancient Gear Fusion isn't a necessity, so don't worry too much about that. And then once you've picked up the bits that you can, if we do get any further support for Ancient Gears, you'll be laughing, because either the price of the cards will go up, or of course you'll have more building interest in the deck. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. And until next time, guys, as always, happy dueling. What's up, YouTube? Thanks for watching that video. I hope you liked it. If you did, hit that like button. And of course, don't forget to hit that big red subscribe button in the bottom left-hand corner and the notification bell so you don't miss out on anything. We've got more deck profiles, duels, pack openings, and many more Yu-Gi-Oh videos coming up for you all year round. So don't forget to stay tuned for all of that. Thanks, and as always, guys, happy dueling.